I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now. I'm here with Doug Gilchrist, City of Kelowna Manager.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent, thanks.
We're doing this catch-up every 2 months, and it's been 2 months.
That's great.
Beautiful weather out there. If we look in the background there, it's a live shot. City of Kelowna looking very beautiful, but a little nippy though, right?
A little chilly.
A little chilly.
Bustling city behind us.
Bustling city. Traffic's moving. Hey, there you go.
It's all of our efforts around traffic improvements.
Traffic and housing. Let's start with housing.
Sure.
We saw a graph just recently. Occupancy way up, and that's a lot of those projects actually coming, like where they're getting the keys to move in, a lot of the rental properties, but building permits way down.
Yep. Yeah, so we had a couple of record years on building permits, tipping over $1 billion 2 years in a row, which were high numbers for us. But on average, it's over a 10-year period, it's much lower than that. So the important thing, and I think you heard this from our planning director the other day, is playing the long game, making sure that we have sound processes, that we continue to try and support the industry and stimulate development and see the steady numbers of units being approved in our city in whatever form, multifamily, single family, townhomes, continue to increase to accommodate the growth that we know is coming. So yeah, we had a big dip this year in numbers, but we're going to have lots of occupancy coming up with some big projects that'll see units on the market.
Does the dip in building permits scare you though? Because that's a time lag, right? That's a lag as we move out. Because a lot of projects take a year to 2 years to kind of come to fruition.
Yeah, it does a little bit, but we're still not a huge market. So when we have 2 or 3 towers in 1 year, we see a spike because of the relative value of those projects, and then the other ones may take another year or 2 to come in behind them. But over the long haul, it tends to equalize pretty well.
Well, we don't see a lot of cranes going up though, right? Like right now, like there's a lot of projects. Like I'm not in the rental market. I think there's lots going on, but in the ownership market, a lot of the towers, I don't see a lot of new towers kind of starting.
Yeah, it is. We are going through a cycle for sure with the kind of, I'll call it political or market instability out there that's happening. We haven't seen that volatility in quite a while. So that does impact the bigger projects that require deeper financing, like towers. But at the same time, we are seeing quite a lot of the 4-story and 6-story form come in the door. Council approved over 200 just this week.
Yeah, and those are smaller buildings, obviously. And that's more of the stick-built stuff too, right?
Yep. Yes. Usually 2-story concrete, 4 on top of the podium is that 6-story model. And we're seeing a little bit more 4 or 5 stories that fit in with the neighborhoods better too as well. They just approved one on Richter at 5 stories in a town center, which will be a great project.
So the vacancy rate has gotten into a better territory, I think, in a better territory since 2008 or something like that?
Yeah, this is the lowest we've seen in a very long time, or sorry, the highest we've seen in a very long time. We say typically that 3 to 5% vacancy rate is a healthy market, where we see rents kind of hit a threshold that are considered more affordable typically. So we're at about 3.8 right now. We've got quite a bit still to come online this year. So we could hit 5. But on the landlord side of things, rents are still higher in Kelowna than
I do
a lot
see
of
incentives
places.
though. I do see some incentives out there. Like driving around, I was talking to a developer today, where you didn't see for a long time in Kelowna, where like rent now available right now, a couple months free. So there's some incentives happening. The rent prices haven't really dropped, and that was from him too. Yeah,
that's true. The prices have held a little bit. That may come off as we see longer vacancies in some of these units, but from an affordability perspective, from an availability perspective, where we're trying to attract labor and resources to the community, it's relatively healthy.
Gives people some choices too, instead of taking the first thing. We got like 6 to 7 people, like kind of like almost like when the housing market was on fire, like like trying to get that one property. Now there's a little bit of room where you can kind of look at a different place and say which better.
For sure. And in the 2 and 3 bedroom units, things are looking quite good in terms of availability. Bachelor units and studios are still really high in demand, and prices remain high there.
Yeah. And then if we look at the other part of the housing market, where like the tiny homes that you guys have been doing, you now have the 3rd operator named for the 3rd location.
Yeah, Collective is the operator. Good group. In fact, I had a conversation with the executive director yesterday. He's really excited about getting in there and getting it up and operating. And I'm lots of confidence they'll operate to a really good standard. They've been pushing dirt in the last few weeks. Utility servicing is going in, and they're assembling the units offsite right now.
How are the other two going? Like, what's the, like they've been going for a while now. How is that going?
Yeah, good successes for sure, particularly in Step Place. I know some of the data around people that have transitioned through that housing into either market or supportive housing, some of them into improved employment and things like that. And that's really what the model is for, right? Help stabilize people and get them back into better functioning in society. So from that perspective, it seems to be working and helping people. The other one is a little bit of a different model in terms of it's the type of structures we have and the cohort that's in there. It's an elderly population in Trailside. But again, similarly, very few calls from bylaw or complaints from the neighbors.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How are the neighbors doing with it?
Seems to be really good.
Because there was a lot of uproar at first, I think in the first one that
sure.
went up there in the northern part of town here, right?
Yeah, up in Appaloosa. And until people see it up and operating, I'm sure they're going to continue to have concerns. But hopefully these other two that we put in place are kind of proof points that show that we can make them function well.
So the locations then, the third one is going around Reed's Corner, I take it?
Appaloosa.
Appaloosa.
And
then
the other side.
The second one was
Trailside.
Trailside.
And then downtown.
And then the Crowley kind of thing?
Yeah,
right.
Step Place.
Yeah. So kind of spread out a little bit too?
Yeah.
Is there plans for a fourth?
Not at this point in time. No, that was under a program announced by Minister Kelowna their last term of office. He's still in charge of that portfolio. How much funding is available and how many more projects they want to do, I don't know.
So yeah, so with the BC government, new old government in place, some new ministers.
What's old is new again?
New, yeah, what's it? Reimagined. They still haven't gone. I don't think they've gone back though, have they? The legislature?
19 next week.
Yeah, so they haven't sat yet. So not a lot of communication, I imagine, right now?
Quite a bit with the DMs and ADMs.
Right.
A little bit of ministerial connection points before they go back. Yeah, for sure. And we're making the priorities of our community known, both through council and through myself and other staff members. So our priorities are front and center. That I think is one benefit of the continuity in government, that we don't have to restart the conversations again. You know, some of our key advocacy items are still right there on the table.
And then I don't think we talked about this before we went on, but fentanyl crisis has been brought to the forefront politically on the international stage. Obviously, Kelowna suffering from some of that opioid crisis as well. How is that problem/solution going in Kelowna?
Well, the items that we've been advocating for and our council's been advocating for around mandatory care, bail reform for prolific offenders, getting a redfish healing center in our region for those with the most complex needs of mental health and addiction overlaps. Those are kind of the three-pronged approach that we're going to continue to advocate for, while at the same time acknowledging that enforcement plays a role too. Yeah. And pushing hard on that front with our partners in the RCMP. Yeah,
because they were saying, like, they interviewed the guy head of the ports, and he was saying only 1 to 3% of the sea cans are even searched or checked, and 0% of the rail cars.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a lot more work that we can do here in Canada on that.
Yeah, most of our advocacy efforts are the kind of the things I mentioned. Those three-pronged approach there is really localized efforts that can really help our community.
There's not much you can do.
Yeah, at the provincial and federal level, we can inform and show what the impacts are, and hopefully encourage greater investment or policy change at those levels.
Yeah. The Airbnb one, I mean, that's one that there's two sides of that one, right? I mean, a lot of people in the tourism industry said that the Airbnb policy went too far and has hurt tourism, and now with the vacancy rate going up. I think you guys put out a piece that you're going to look at it again.
I mean, we'll always continue to monitor it and make sure that our policy changes don't hurt the economy. I mean, the council has a priority of supporting the economy, and we're going to get deeper into it this year as that volatility is out there. When it comes to tourist numbers, I think it's important for us to look at the stats and not anecdotal information. And when you think of tourists that come through the airport, we had our busiest year on record at the airport, right? Over 2.1 million passengers. ninth busiest in the country. So air traffic, it didn't go down. I think it's really critical that we look at the actual data.
Yeah.
What did the
Local
hotel,
politicians,
what are the
though,
hotel,
were saying, and,
hotel
saying those
nights,
numbers,
and
right?
things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. But I mean, we have seen stats showing that hotel rates have gone up, and I'm speaking more about Vancouver in that.
Yeah.
Hotel rates have gone up because there is no, like in a big event, no Airbnb to kind of absorb that kind of like that swell.
Yeah. Well, and I think council heard that, right? So they did pull back a little bit on their policy that was previously there to be more in line and consistent with the rest of the province. The amount of units that were available under nightly accommodation or Airbnb and the units that were available in the marketplace when the policy went in place is not that dramatically different. It's a few hundred. So by doing this, are there going to be that many more back on the marketplace, or was this tourism impact other things, right? The general economy, people's availability or willingness to travel, fires, things like that probably had, in my opinion, equally as much, if not more impact.
Yeah, there was some vocal politicians, including some cities politicians, that were saying that it had a detrimental effect, right? But it is tough to say unless you dig into the numbers, for sure, right?
Yeah, definitely. But nonetheless, we've made a change, and some people will be pleased with that change.
Yeah, like I said, it's a controversial one at best, and that one was a pretty heated one first. Immigration, I would think, played a bigger role in the housing crisis than when the government pointed the finger at the Airbnb as the culprit in that, when we had, like extremely high immigration in the past year, right? So obviously there's housing needs for people, right?
Yeah, I mean, immigration has a two-edged sword, right? There's being able to accommodate large amounts of people coming to our communities in rapid fashion is difficult, and we know that firsthand as one of the
Stresses health as well.
Fastest growing communities in the country. Health, schools, you name it. At the other side, we have shortage of labor or certain professionals and things like that. We need immigration to support that. So finding the right balance is tricky, and thankfully, I'm not in the immigration business, so I don't have to.
Yeah, I know that the universities and colleges are kind of like having that issue right now too, because when it's cut back, because they were reliant on that immigration model, kind of because they were getting way more money for somebody coming from overseas than they were getting from Canadian citizen in the schools, right? So, and
some institutions more than others. We've been talking to a number of them, and doing what we can to help prop up the institutions. Certainly for Kelowna. We want to be that post-secondary hub as we are, and keep that growing. Super important to our demographic as well.
And you must like golf because you bought a golf course.
I play a little bit of golf poorly, like a lot of people.
So you guys bought Michael Brook.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's for future expansion of the big recreational facility that's there.
Well, it's probably a bit of both. It shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody because we've identified that area in our official community plan to grow for recreational purposes. So it's a perfect strategic property being.
Well, that is one of the Kelowna's bigger kind of like recreational areas, right? With the ball fields, the skating rink, the soccer fields, the H2O center. Yeah,
and it had the opportunity to become that because people long before me had the foresight to assemble that, get it out of I think a portion was in the ALR at one time, and set it up for the future growth that we're seeing today.
What about those naturalized areas that are in that swamp area? Is that part of that? Was that part of that purchase?
That was part of the original deal, the Thompson Farm and Thompson Marsh, I think it might have been called at one time.
Lots of birds in there. I've taken a lot of pictures there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spot. It's a great mix of uses.
Yeah, and then I guess like you were saying earlier that construction, before we went on, construction season is about to begin, and that's a lot of road construction, a lot of sewer construction still going on.
Yeah, so as I said, one of the fastest growing communities in the country. One of my obligations is to ensure we keep up with the infrastructure needs. That can be parks, roads, sewer, water, buildings, you name it, libraries. So there's a good solid plan to deliver that amount of that infrastructure that's needed, but it does come with a few headaches, right? When there's road construction, there's only 8 or so months a year where we can do solid road construction and undergrounding of power lines and things like that. So I guess this is kind of the notice that there will be
watch for those signs.
Significant construction season this year, and we will do our best to manage detours and traffic and all of that while we go through that.
I haven't been up to the new Save On Foods up on Gordon there. My daughter and my wife have been up there. They say it's absolutely beautiful, that Save On Foods.
Yeah, that Ponds commercial is
Yeah.
turning out really well. I know they're getting some excellent tenants up there. Look forward to the full build out.
Yeah, because that takes a lot of pressure off of like that Pandozi and that too, because people can shop in that area as opposed to coming all the way back down into the Mission, right? So
Yeah, and the Frost Road connection off of Chute Lake is going to be the primary artery to get people there. So hopefully that'll increase traffic up there as well.
So what are the biggest areas for development in the city of Kelowna right now? That's obviously a big one, that the south part of the city, and then Glenmore.
Yeah, so right now our split between single family multi is 80% multifamily, 20% single family.
So that'd be in the urban center.
Urban core, infill, 4 to 6 story buildings, townhomes, stacked townhomes in some cases, things like that. Fewer towers, as you mentioned. Once this kind of glut comes through the system, there's probably not as many in application, but there will be more.
There's a lot that are proposed, right? That still have never gone forward. The old Kelly O'Brien, not Kelly O'Brien, but where that old hotel was. I can't remember. I think that's West Corp's piece.
Yeah,
right there.
West Corp has a site. I know Mission Group has a site or two. We have the future mill site downtown.
Right, that's a big one.
That's going to take
That's
some
huge,
high density
right?
there. So there is a lot on the horizon that gives me comfort that we'll have availability. But yeah, in the meantime, there's still single family out in the South Mission. There's some up in the Black Mountain area that's going to come on. Glenmore has lots of potential for future growth.
Go way back in there, right?
In various forms over the long term.
Parkinson Rec, any updates on that?
Yeah, exciting, really exciting. This is our biggest capital undertaking we've done ever. The whole Building Stronger Kelowna, which is not just Parkinson, but a number of other facilities. We will be in the ground this spring after much debate and planning and design and funding and everything else. And we're super excited about that. It's going to be a fantastic.
So when will the facility close?
Well, it won't close until the new one is open.
Oh, okay, so it's going to be built.
So we're building it off same site, but to the north.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we'll have some fields out of commission.
Because people are asking me, and then somebody said, well, they're still going there. And I'm like, okay, so then.
Oh yeah, they'll keep going right through till the other one's open. Then
so it's not going to stress the other kind of like H2O or something like that, because people can still go to Parkinson Rec until the new one's built.
Correct. Field usage will be the one that we're trying to maintain as many fields as we can, but at the same time, we're also building fields in both Rutland and in Glenmore. So,
yeah. Anything else exciting that's going to happen this summer in Kelowna?
Clear skies all summer long.
Clear skies.
That's what I'm predicting.
No smoke would be a good way.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
How involved? They're talking about no smoke. How involved is the city of Kelowna in mitigation? Now, you guys did some work in Knox Mountain that turned out to be really good for that wildfire. Like, how much more are you doing? Is it increasing or?
Yeah, so controlled burns is certainly something I think many municipalities, not just us, are on top of and wanting to do more of. Obviously, it's a tricky one. So air quality and things, making sure it's well controlled. But within our parks, regional parks, and then the periphery of our city and major high risk areas. So the high risk areas, get identified, and then we work on those. So there's fuel modification and controlled burns are two important pieces. But I know our fire department is really working hard on innovations. So prevention, mitigation, and response.
And detection kind of thing. Too.
Detection for sure. Yeah. We have a bunch of sensors out there right now doing smoke and heat detection as a bit of trial. So I think technology is going to be an important part of fuel fire or forest fire mitigations and response in the future.
I know in that AI summit they were talking about drones that can fight fires like 24/7.
Heavy lift drones. Are going to be an interesting piece to see how that evolves.
Because that would be amazing, because right now, as soon as it gets dark, they pull them off. And whereas a drone can, doesn't matter if it's dark, they use radar. And
night flying, the pilot fatigue, smoke, high risk terrain, all those things could.
And if you crash a drone, it costs a few bucks. It doesn't cost a life, right?
Yeah, they're more than a few bucks, but yes, it's much.
But it's still money, right?
Much different than a big heavy lift helicopter.
Yeah.
And then, I'm excited about seeing where technology can advance firefighting and forest firefighting.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Anything else?
There's lots going on there.
Is there?
But I'm excited. It's positive. And,
let's talk about the green part, I guess. We'll end with that. The green side of it. Lots of like multifamily units going up, and that's lots of people when they get like an EV, they can charge at home. They put a charger in, but then less opportunity when you have multiple unit building. Is that in the building code now, or how are they dealing with all these?
Yeah, so electric charging in multifamily has been a bit of a point of contention because it's a cost, and you have to make sure the benefit and the usage is going to be there. So whether it's fully plumbed with a charger versus making sure the conduit and electrical capacity is there, that's a debate right now. We certainly have a fair bit of work to do with our electrical service provider to make sure we're ready for this, not just this growth, but the electrification of our city as well. So that is certainly an ongoing conversation to make sure we can support our electrical service provider and any government intervention or policy that's needed to get them there.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't realize is that if you charge at home, it can be anywhere from like 6 to 15 cents a kilowatt. And whereas you charge in some of the superchargers, and it's basically almost like a market rate, right? So it can fluctuate, and it can, like I remember charging in Richmond, and it was like 11 cents, which was a pretty good deal for a supercharger. And then charging Calgary, and it's 55 cents, right? So,
even time of day, demand pricing.
So, so when people buy an EV and don't have access to a home charger, they have to really realize where they're going to be able to get, a more. Because the gas pump is one, like that's where you're subject to market price all the time, right? Like when you wake up one morning, it's like, it's up 15 cents. Right?
I'm going through that process right now in my own garage.
Yeah, so there you go, right? So it's a tough thing, right? So I don't know, is there any plans to kind of put a more stable priced kind of EV charger out there? I guess that would put the city in the business of.
Yeah, so reselling electricity governed a little bit differently, right?
Yeah.
And we're not involved in that governance model.
Well,
however,
you had an electricity. You had a utility at
we
one
did,
time.
and now we have an investment in electricity. But we have been, and will probably continue to be developing public charging throughout our city. In combination with the marketplace taking care of that. There's more private charging than there is public charging out there today, but we want to make sure that we continue that momentum.
And what's the fleet, the City of Kelowna fleet, looking like as far as electrification?
Yeah, so we have an EV strategy internally for our own fleet, and it's growing quite substantially. Many of our trucks, many of our cars, inspection vehicles.
I haven't seen a Cybertruck yet.
No Cybertrucks, no, not quite in the market for those. Or the right price point, but a lot of F-150 Lightnings we have in our fleet.
I think the Cybertruck now is the same price as an F-150 Lightning, so they just dropped it. So.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. You can drive around like a boss. And then obviously there's some heavy stuff that's coming in electrification too, like buses. And I see in LA, they're actually going to do a charging road for the buses and the cars will be charging as they're driving.
I've heard though about the demo roads. We'll see how they pan out.
We'll
let them try them first before we bring them in up north under our foggy winters.
There you go. We thank you for the update.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And keeps people up to date. And look at that beautiful shot there, right? Like we do live in a beautiful city, right?
That's why we're growing like we are.
And then look, the traffic's moving, and it must be moving across the bridge, otherwise it'd be backed up by now, right? How many calls did you get on the bridge thing, like getting on the bridge?
That was a busy day, and it had an impact on a lot of people. And I will say, for those listening, we're definitely doing a postmortem on that event and making sure we have good mitigation plans in place and seeing what we can do to.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a couple of seconds, because the people on the west side, to get across here, there was a helicopter that was doing some emergency stuff to the airport, and that was Alpine, I think.
Yeah.
Doing that. I imagine there could have been boats that were ferrying people.
There were, and our fireboat.
Oh, yeah, that out there too. There you go.
Yeah, we had a couple dozen people that we knew were.
But some people tried that back road in Penticton, which is usually kind of okay in the summertime, but not very good. And a lot of people tried it and got stuck up there, right?
Yeah.
Was that 22? What's that road called? I can't remember what they call it, but it's out of Penticton. Yeah. Goes up over the top.
Yeah, Naramata to Shoot
and
Lake
Lodge. But coming out of Penticton, it's pretty scary.
That's a gravel road, not a commuter road, that's for sure. Never mind winter or summer.
I did it once, I think, like 15 years ago, and there was a fire and the road was closed, or when I had to get to a hockey camp for my son, and I had to pull a trailer.
Yeah,
talk about nerve-wracking.
Thankfully, bridge disruptions are few and far between. I mean, when they do happen, it's quite dramatic, but they don't happen that often. The only thing related to the bridge that's kind of been publicly out there as a possible mitigation is adding a 5th lane to the bridge. That was in the provincial study that came out a couple of years ago. And we're hoping that the province invests heavily in our road network, our multimodal network in the Okanagan Valley, because it's sorely needed.
I mean, that's the only time I can remember ever somebody doing something like that would shut the bridge down like that, right? Because if it's an accident, you usually have the other lanes going too, right? And it's obviously a safety reason. And the other reason the big delay is because we had to get the team out of the bomb squad out of Vancouver, and they have to drive here right? In the winter to make things even worse, right?
Yeah, and we are taking a look at that. I mean, the events that we have to call that team up here. Again, they're few and far between, maybe like 6 or 7 in the last 10 years. Now, we've had a couple in the last year, but I don't see that trajectory increasing dramatically. So we're looking at options about perhaps having equipment here or some other specialized expertise. But an entire squad that's equivalent to what they have in the Lower Mainland would be very expensive and not justified based on our numbers.
And there were some alternatives. They were long, though. I mean, you can go to Osoyoos and come back around Rock Creek and then come back up through Beaverdale and come down through Big White. So I was just thinking.
Or Vernon, the other way.
Yeah, the Vernon. You could do, there's a couple of different ways if you absolutely had to get there. Anyway. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And we thank you for watching Kelowna Now.
Just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence.